Hello, and welcome to our show, Free to Be She, on the Cross-Dress Radio Network. And we are sisters today with Elizabeth.
Hello.
You ready, Elizabeth? Sisters, there were never such devoted sisters. Never had to have a chaperone. No, sir.
No, sir.
I'm here to keep my eye on her. Well, that was a fun one, everybody. Yes, I'm your host, Jennifer Sometimes, and on the Crossdress Radio Network, brought to you by CrossdressTravel.com and in part by OnFim. And you can go to their website, onfemstyle.com. We have a really great show this evening. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. In fact, this show is going to be I'm so blessed by having our guest on this evening. And we're going to do two shows in a row with Rhonda from Tri-Ess. And so to start with, I want to introduce our technician in here, our director, our producer, the one that knows where all the gadgets and the bodies are buried. That's Melissa.
Thanks. Yeah, hi.
And today sitting in for Miss Pamela is Elizabeth. She's on our team also. Say hi, Elizabeth.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And that was the first time we ever sang together, so it was fun. Yeah, it's always having fun. And all.
A lot.
So our first off, I want to say that we have our Valentine's cruise. There's still cabins available on that, and I really highly suggest you take a look at it. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going out of Tampa, Florida for a week. That's 7 nights that we're going to be out. And it's going to be departing on February 9th on Carnival Cruise. We're going to have a lot of fun. I've been on it. It's just going to be wonderful. Very special time. And we did it last year, and we're going to do it again. Every year, Valentine's. And like we did here just very recently, we did Halloween. So you can plan it for years out. We're going to be here for you. And our distinguished guest this evening is Rhonda. She's the outreach director for Tri-Ess. And I'll let her explain really what Tri-Ess is, because I really don't think there's any other organization like this in the country or even the world. And it's focused directly on the crossdresser. And helping not only the crossdresser, but also their significant others. So I think a lot of us understand that when a guy first comes out to his significant others, there can be a lot of stuff going on in their relationship, and there's some help here, some real help. So anyway, without much further ado, I would like to introduce Rhonda. Hello, Rhonda. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for inviting me onto your show.
Well, you're very welcome. You're in Atlanta. We have Elizabeth over in the Tampa area, and I'm in Orlando. So we're kind of all scattered around, but through the magic of technology, here we all are. And,
I'm actually in North Carolina.
Yes. You know, what's interesting, just before we get started, is Elizabeth here. Elizabeth, we brought in, she didn't know, I think, very much about cross-dressers before I started talking with her, and she's had quite a learning experience. She brings a lot of talent to what we're doing here on Cross-Dress Travel and Cross-Dress Radio Network. And we're very blessed to have Elizabeth with us, definitely so. And So she may have a few questions on her own here. I'm hoping anyway, because she's got a really good perspective. Tri-Ess, like I said a minute ago, has a very unique position in the cross-dressing culture. And if you can give us just a couple of quick minutes here, discuss what Tri-Ess is, you might say the nutshell, and then I'd like to drill a little deeper than we did when we had the head of your organization, Jane Ellen, on here not too long ago, and gave a wonderful interview.
Yes, Tri-Ess, well, Jane Ellen gave the history of it going back to 1948 in its original formation, I think, but Tri-Ess itself came together later. It's a national support group for cross-dressers and their significant others. It's the only support group that I'm aware of its kind, certainly the only national one, but I haven't actually heard of any local ones because I quite often get asked by people that are interested in Tri-Ess, and I'm not aware of any other cross-dressing support groups. And by cross-dressing support group, I mean a group that focuses strictly on cross-dressers and is not what I would call a diversity group, which would include transgender, what most people think of as transgender, transsexuals, people that are transitioning. So Tri-Ess focuses strictly on cross-dressers, that unique niche, which is much larger than the ones that transition. But we have unique needs, and especially with the wives being supported, we want to make people comfortable. At least that's why I travel 300 some miles each way to go to Atlanta every month to go to the Tri-Ess meeting there. And why I wouldn't have joined something closer was because I wasn't really tuning into a broader diversity group. I was a little scared of it. I think it would scare away a lot of wives if they came to a group and they saw a lot of the husbands already transitioned, things like that. Mm-hmm. So we focus on things that put people in their comfort zones, which for cross-dressers typically are more so being with other cross-dressers as opposed to being in a broader diversity group.
I think that's really important because for the wives specifically of cross-dressers, they go out and they do research. And so much of the research out there on the internet, and if it's on the internet, it must be true, says that your husband wants to transition. This is just a step toward transition. And that's not the case. There's this segment of people that are cross-dressers. They still want to own their maleness, but enjoy their feminine side as well. And I think that's super important that the wives see that you guys, are still enjoying both worlds at the same time.
Yeah, the biggest fear of most wives is that their husband will transition, and the other fear is that they're gay, which of course we don't even ask the question really about sexual preference because that doesn't determine whether you're a cross-dresser or not. But as Jane Ellen pointed out, there are far fewer gay people that are cross-dressers than there are in the general population. But that's a misguided assumption, which often scares wives. And the transition part is very unusual as well. But most wives are afraid of that, and they are perceiving that that's where it's headed.
Right.
Yes. I was a member of Phi Epsilon Mu some years ago. For about 5 years, I was a member there. And it was very enlightening to me having kind of sort of starting to come out more and then underdressing and the occasional running out in the middle of the evening in that dark of night dressed up to some extent and having those expressions. And it was really having a group of other cross-dressers that for the most part, like 90% are straight, and as regard, I don't care if they're gay or not either, but I'm just saying. But there is this camaraderie that is telling for the direction I want to go in life, and the road I'm going down is a road well worn by others, and versus a road that has many off ramps, or a road that's already divided, and it gives more singular direction, which I needed, And it was a real benefit to me in my life going to a Tri-Ess chapter. Another thing I wanted to ask you was some of the demographics, like the age groups. I've noticed that many cross-dressers tend to be the middle-aged or older.
Yes.
So,
I actually have done demographic study based on our applicants. So I've now interviewed probably 175, 180 applicants in the past 5 or 6 years that I've been an outreach director for our chapter. And so I asked them to divulge, if they don't mind, and very few people mind, various aspects about what their occupation is, what their age is, whether they're married, whether the wife supports, all kinds of things that are of interest, I think, to our group. And I use that in my quizzes for classroom presentations. But as far as the age is concerned, the median age is in the 50s among those who join our group or apply for joining. To give an exact breakdown, the last time I did this, 7% are under 30, 12% are in their 30s, 23% are in their 40s, 20% in their 50s, 28% in their 60s, and 11% in their 70s. We've actually had at least one person that was in their 80s that joined for the first time.
Well, hang loose. I'm going to be getting there soon enough anyway.
Well, you can join
What do you attribute the reason that the number's so low on the younger side of the spectrum?
Well, there's a lot of people that speculate that it's because they don't really need it anymore. You know, at that age, it's becoming accepted in society and so forth. I don't really agree with that. I'm not sure what the true answer is. I think they maybe don't hear about it. That was my problem. I didn't hear about it. But I think there's another factor that, this is again my speculation, but I believe that a lot of the tendency to want to cross-dress is driven by hormones, and changes in hormones occur in their 50s, I think, 50s and 60s. For men, it's a little later than women, but there is such a thing as andropause. And I think that one of the consequences of your changing hormone levels when you get older for cross-dressers often is that you have this increasing desire to cross-dress. You probably had experiences when you were young. Most everybody has, but you manage to put them aside or deal with them or suppress them. But later on in life, it gets harder. That's my personal reflection on that.
You know, I've noticed, just as a young woman and as I'm getting a little more middle age now, that as you get older, you start to care a lot. My birthday's coming up, Jennifer. I'm going to be 40.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Oh.
You didn't know that. That you start to care less about what other people think. And like from my experiences with cross-dress radio and cross-dress travel, a lot of the cross-dressers I talk to on the Instagram, there are a lot of people that are still closeted. But I think as, these men are maturing, then they're going, well, there is a time limit on my time here on Earth, and I want to enjoy what time I have remaining. And I think that they just let it loose. And why am I letting this hold me back? I think that they decide that, it's time to live a little bit for me before I go,
Yeah, there's another aspect that I've noticed is that quite often people come out because they're triggered by some major life event, like their spouse died, and that brings people into the forefront. And going along with what you said, I think, is that you say, I only have so many years to live, and this is something I've always wanted to try. But I do believe that there are things that haven't been studied yet. Like I've noticed that cross-dressers tend to have a much higher prevalence of osteoporosis than women do. And that's one thing I've dealt with. And so because I'm interested in that subject, I've asked a lot of people, have you discovered, do you know anything about your bone density, your testosterone levels, and so forth? And it tends to be that most cross-dressers do have problems with osteoporosis or low bone density. And so I think there's something going on hormonally. And, when I've explored this personally, I believe that there is a correlation. And, for women, quite often when they go through menopause, they get low on the essential hormones, and quite often they get treated with estrogen to combat the osteoporosis. It's generally thought to be a women's disease. So, but I don't think it's true that it's just a women's disease. But I think it's, it's rare in men, but it's much more common among cross-dressers, I've noticed. I'd love to see a study done on that. But I've asked an endocrinologist about that, and he confirms that theory also.
Wow, that's really interesting. I haven't run across that before. That's very telling in its own right, and I'd like to get more information definitely on that.
And actually, if you look at hormones, that's the main reason why we become cross-dressers. It starts before birth, and it has to do with the hormone. Now, this is what a lot of people believe anyway, and most people, I think, now believe it's genetic. And one of the things that happens before birth is you've got this thing going on with the estrogen and testosterone before birth, and your brain is affected differently for some of us because it's at a different time when your brain is impacted by these hormones versus your genitals. And with cross-dressing, it's all about the brain, what you perceive yourself to be. It's not about the genitals.
Yeah, that's very, very, very true. Very true. Real quick, while we have a moment here, I would like you to let our audience know how to get a hold of Tri-Ess, how they can get some more information about your chapters, who you are, where you are, how they can get involved.
Well, there is a website for Tri-Ess. I believe it's tri-ess.org. I believe that's correct. And I'm a member of the Sigma Epsilon chapter, which is the Southeast pretty much, except for Florida. They have some of their own groups there. But basically anywhere north of Florida, we have members in Florida as well, all the way up to New Jersey and all the way west to the Mississippi River, basically. So anybody wanting to get in touch with me is certainly welcome to do that if they're in that geographical region. So I'm available at sigmaepsilonatlanta.org. You can go onto that site and look at our website and become familiar with our bylaws and our purpose and various other things. And I'm available. I think I'm listed on the site, but my contact information is barbra36@hotmail.com, or you can just call me at 336-414-4731. There's also a hotline listed on the website, so if anybody calls the hotline, I will respond to those people that contact us that way.
Yeah. Also, for our listeners, they can also get a hold of you if there's a outreach. If you have an organization you'd like to have Rhonda come and speak in front of, that's a possibility. Is that right?
Well, definitely. I'd love to hear from people that want to do that, because that's one of the things I really enjoy is getting in front of classrooms or other organizations that want to learn. I'm all about education. I think that's what we all need to focus on. It's not so much, I'm speaking for myself more than our group, but it is one of the four main purposes of our chapter in Tri-Ess is education of the general public. And that's not for the purpose of bringing people into the support group. It's just basically so people can know more about who we are.
Speaking of contacting, I have to take a moment to remind everyone, if you miss a show, you can find us on iHeartRadio or iTunes under Free to Be She. And please make sure that you like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube, because we are halfway toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers. So I know that some people are concerned about subscribing because they're closeted. If you have your own little private account, please subscribe, because once we hit that 1,000 goal, then YouTube gives us that little kickback, and that would help us keep this show going. And I know there's lots of cross-dressers out there that have told me that they appreciate our show. So show us your appreciation by liking and subscribing. We appreciate you for doing that.
Yes, and as Miss Pamela would say, show us some love.
There you go.
Yes, yes. Wow, this is really interesting. I've learned more about Tri-Ess than I've ever known. and it's quite something. I was impressed with the way that they've had groups to help the wives and significant others, and they would share information and try to get beyond some of the internet false information and try to sort out where it's really at. And I can tell you that when I was there, new members were always welcome. Always. I would tell them that they find a home there. And now there are also meetup groups around that are cross-dress meetup groups, and some of them are a combination of cross-dress and trans, whatever, different kinds and all. I would suggest, when possible, to try, if you're a cross-dresser coming out and you're in with your significant other, I try to stay with the cross-dress only, and not get any more confusion with things going on as it is. So you keep things more pure into where you are. That's all I'm trying to get at in that sense. Meetup groups. Well, in fact, why don't you tell us a little bit of difference between meetup groups and Tri-Ess, which is chapter-oriented. And I know we voted for the president of our chapter and all kinds of things. It has a wonderful structure to it. And
well, we have a board of directors, so there's currently 6 on our board. We all serve different functions. We got the president, vice president, treasurer, outreach director, secretary, hospitality person usually to set up our suite. We have a suite that we meet in that's in a private location every month, which is one thing that's important if anybody's looking for support. You want to know that it's private, so we don't allow photos of anybody that doesn't consent, and even photos that are taken have to be confined to our own publications. We can't share them elsewhere. We can't share personal information. I can't give you contact information for somebody else in the group unless they specifically consent to it. And I interview people beforehand to make sure that we don't have people that are trying to break into the group that may have other purposes in mind, or perhaps they're on a different path. I mean, we're not equipped to help somebody if they're on the transition route. So we have nothing against people that transition. We just are not able to help people on that route. So we can perhaps redirect people. And if people are uncertain about where they're going, we will certainly welcome them into the group so that they can help figure it out. But once they figure it out, if it turns out they want to go further, then they're not going to really find what they're looking for. So we stick strictly to cross-dressers or people that have traveled through. I still retain close friendships, and we don't kick people out of the group because of the fact they've traveled through and moved on. But very few people travel through. Most people know by the time they come to our group that they really don't have an interest and inclination to transition. Some people, however, do. So, they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's very important for our female partners to understand that. And if their significant other, the male involved here, wants to go into a Tri-Ess meeting, I would highly recommend go with them. It's a wonderful environment. You'll be very, very welcoming, very, very supportive and accepting, loving, caring. I mean, all the good words, and that's where it all comes from. A lot of people there that open their hearts up. And they're going through this also. I've talked a little bit about some of my struggles and all, and going to that chapter really helped to change my life and give me a lot more direction and made my life a lot easier all the way around and gave me a deeper connection with Jennifer. So
we certainly welcome
anyone.
The wife.
Yes.
So, Rhonda, can you tell us more about that? Like, how does Tri-Ess involve the significant others, wives or girlfriends, and how does it help the wife or the girlfriend? So for our listeners that have the significant other and they're debating about, is this the right group for me? Or maybe a wife is listening right now and going, is this going to be helpful to us. How did they get help through you guys?
Oh, yeah. First of all, the wives can connect with other wives. We love for wives to come because they probably have some doubt about what we're up to. But if they come, and I've had wives say that, they say, I came because I just wanted to make sure that it was okay. They have some questions about why the husband wants to come to this. But they find out that we're really just a social group that are trying to help each other. It genuinely is a support group. I questioned that myself early on because we just went out and had fun doing things. But this is just a social group. But I learned as I went along that it's much more than that. And the wives need to know that the husband is really getting a lot of support. And we don't want to just support the husbands. We want to support the relationship. That something like 80% of our members are married. So, that surprises people. But the relationship needs to be nurtured. We encourage couples to stay together and to understand each other, to work together, because this is not a deal breaker unless there's a lack of understanding. So it helps the marriage. I've even had a counselor that I've gone to say, you really need to go to Tri-Ess, even if it conflicts with a grandson was born once and I wanted to go off and see the grandson. She says, well, that conflicts with your Tri-Ess meeting. I think it's more important for you to go to your support group. You can see your grandson later, but so it's that important. It's not just a meetup. It's not even a meetup group, probably. Meetup groups tend to be more diverse and they tend to be more social. But the Tri-Ess group includes a 2-hour support group meeting when we get together on a Saturday. We meet on Friday also, but in the evening to go out to do some activity. But on Saturday morning from 10 to 12, it's purely support. And the new members have a chance to ask any questions they like. The wife can come in and ask any questions they like, any issues they have. They can, we're wide open. If they don't feel like talking, they can just listen and we'll tell them about our stories. Whatever the new member wants to hear, wherever they're at, they have a chance to get advice and counseling. And even counselors that work with the transgender folks usually say this is better therapy or better counseling than they're likely to get with a counselor who hasn't been directly involved. So you can get pretty much any question you have answered. Should we tell the kids, or what do we do with our neighbors, or all kinds of questions come up, and you can deal with other people that have dealt with all of these issues and speak directly to the person that needs to know the information.
I know on your website, because speaking of that, you're more than just a social group. It said that Sigma Epsilon does not function as a political action group, but an important part of what we do is to educate others about cross-dressing by privately addressing college and university students, educators, law enforcement, as well as various professional groups about the phenomenon of cross-dressing. And I really want to talk about this. But first, we would like to have an announcement from our sponsors on FEM.
Okay. No, I thought we were going to. Okay, we all know that shopping for that special dress or outfit can sometimes be challenging. Will it fit correctly? Will it be flattering on me? And will it feel I feel confident wearing it? Well, that challenge has been solved at OnFem, the premier clothing brand for the cross-dresser and trans woman. At OnFem, they solved that fit challenge by designing for the male body, creating signature, on-trend styles that use premium quality fabrics and innovative design techniques to ensure you get a beautiful fit each and every time so that you feel and be your most confident. You can receive 15% off your next purchase by using the code FREE2BE-SHE. Just enter the code FREE2BE-SHE during the checkout and you will receive a 15% off your total order for eligible items. OnFem, helping you express the woman within. And you go to the website on femmestyle.com. That's Ian, FEMMESTYLE.com. And I've personally worn their materials, or their dresses, and their materials are awesome. I love it, and they fit. I'm a guy, and they fit me. Whoa, I love it. So, with that, we're going back to our guest. And
so Rhonda, so before we left for that commercial, so I noticed that it says that you guys do a lot of activist activities, and not necessarily activists as in picket lines, but that you have outreach, and you are the outreach director of your chapter, correct?
Yes.
And so when we had been talking earlier, you said that you were working on some legislation with WPATH and USPATH. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is really exciting because it's current and it's been needed for a long time. I mean, we're all aware of the transgender movement and how there's more rights being accorded and more comfort levels established with transgender people. Well, most people have assumed that transgender means somebody who identifies as a sex other than their birth sex. That wasn't always the case. Transgender used to refer primarily to cross-dressers, but things have morphed over time. And the general understanding, especially with people seeing all the transgender movement in the market, the people you see are folks like Caitlyn Jenner or various princess, what was it, the warrior princess. Anyway, the folks that come out tend to be going that direction, transitioning. That's what people see. The other thing people see is drag shows. And so they associate people that cross-dress with being what they'd expect in a drag show. So what we're trying to do is educate folks in the fact that, no, for every person like that, there's 10 others who don't have the inclination to transition, and they're not into drag. They're not gay, and all these misperceptions. So I go out to the classrooms to try to dispel some of these false assumptions. But beyond the classroom, now I'm getting involved nationally and internationally, actually. WPATH is an acronym for World Professional Association of Transgender Health. They're the outfit that primarily influences things like the Diagnostic Statistical Manual or other psychiatric psychologists thinking about who we are. And that filters down into counseling and medical professionals. And medical professionals, of course, have a vested interest in transitioning people. So they're inclined to buy into this idea that it's transitioning people and we're going to help them transition. That's how they make their living, and they will sponsor activities or seminars that involve that kind of thinking and draw quite a crowd worldwide. But beneath that veneer, there are far more people that aren't looking for that's not who they are. So I'm trying to help people become aware of that. And I've discovered even under the WPATH umbrella, people generally don't know that cross-dressers exist. It's a phenomenon that is under the radar, and it's becoming even more so because the transgender movement is bringing to light people that are transitioning even more. And I'm finding in my classrooms that students, when I ask them a question like, would a cross-dresser typically say that they identify as a gender that's the same as their birth gender? It used to be everybody said yes. Now less than half say yes, because people were starting to associate transgender with the idea that you identify as a sex that's different than your birth sex. Well, that isn't the way it is at all. I recently came in September. I went to a USPATH meeting, which is the U.S. part of WPATH, and they'd had a WPATH meeting preceding it. So I met with directors and the influential people that actually worked on the terminology. And the person who came up with it, the definition for the standards of care, which defines transgender, it refers to those who have characteristics such as gender identity that are different than their natal sex. And so we said, does that mean it does imply gender identity? He says, not, by no means. He says the intent was to, and he thought everybody would assume that it means expression and behavior, not just gender identity. But the way it was worded was a little bit ambiguous. So we're changing that because he himself said, hey, look, I came up with this definition. Why are you telling me it doesn't include expression and behavior? That's exactly what it includes. But because of the group think that's evolved, most people think it has to do with identity. And that's what we're seeing now in legislation. You can take any issue you want, but the bathroom issue would be one where people are saying it's okay. Some legislatures are saying it's okay to go in the bathroom according to the gender with which you identify. Notice they don't say presentation. Now, how does anybody know how I identify when I go to the restroom? Nobody can know that. What people are really concerned about is presentation. But the focus has been on identity. And so we're trying to change that. And as a result of the presentation that Jane Ellen Fairfax and Dr. Dana Bevan, who's a director of US Path, and myself gave in September, I think we have got the right audience to listen to us. And even subsequent to that, they have now incorporated what we had to say into the Global Education Initiative, GEI, for WPATH. So as we speak, the training has now changed to incorporate cross-dressers into the transgender umbrella, because a lot of people would argue that cross-dressers don't belong under the transgender umbrella. There really isn't any place for them. It's never been defined. The term cross-dresser worldwide is defined in so many different ways that that's still a problem on a world level, trying to come up with a definition for the term. So people don't know the definition of the term, and they haven't generally considered them to be part of the umbrella at all. So I think we have consensus that cross-dressers have the same needs as transsexual people do, but for the most part, but we do have some unique needs. But we would like to be included, and we think we deserve to be included in all of the things that are being fought for the rights that the transgender people have been fighting for, which include healthcare and military and all the other things. There's a whole string of things. I think I sent you a list, and so in my presentation I went down through all of these things that we have in common. I said, so we should be included from that end of it. We shouldn't be forgotten. We are the majority of those who are transgender, according to the proper meaning of the term. But typically people I don't like to even say I'm transgender anymore, because people assume that means I'm going to transition, or I have already, or I'm headed down the path. So I'm reluctant to even say that. I used to be saying I'm transgender, and if you think that, if you don't understand, I'll explain, that includes cross-dressing. But now that doesn't mean that to most people. So I'm a little careful. But now I want to go the other direction and say, well, I am transgender, but it may not mean what you think. I'm just a cross-dresser. I have no desire to change sex. There's no correlation that I have ever seen that says somebody who has this need to dress also feels that they're a member of the opposite sex. And my gender is still male. So just the fact that I have a need to express as female, I say that's a different animal. And you shouldn't assume that just because of my expression, that implies I have a gender, my gender is different, or I feel incongruent with my male gender. I don't. I feel very congruent with it. I just have a need to express my female side.
Wow, what a wonderful explanation.
I thought Jane Ellen did the best job in her interview. She said cross-dressers have a need to, they need to integrate their male and their female. And in her chapter, they have male get-togethers and female get-togethers, and they don't lose the male. The female encompasses the male, whereas people who are typically thought of as transgender quite often want to lose their male side. They say, I am female. If I talk to somebody who is transsexual, I say, are you a woman? They say, yes, I am. And I always known I was, quite often. Whereas a cross-dresser will seldom say that.
Yes.
I have this need. I don't know that I need to transition. I don't know if I'm a woman or I'm not a woman. So there's a distinction there. And whereas the transgender people I run into that are thinking that way generally want to transition. They're headed that way. They're thinking that way. They've lost their male side. I think we have the best of all worlds because we keep the male, we keep the female, we try to integrate both into one. So I think that's a distinction that's a major one that I hadn't thought about before, quite frankly, until I listened to Jane Ellen's interview. And I said, she's really hit it on the head. We have both sides. We want to integrate it. So we want to be a sum that's better than the two parts. Whereas
Definitely.
I think most transgender people would prefer to just move in the other. They're strangely enough, we talk about gender binary. I see them as gender binary. They're just changed their poles, whereas cross-dressers are gender non-binary because we recognize we have the male and the female in very strong proportions.
Yeah, what's interesting is that we talked a little earlier about our female partners and significant others, and this is where if they take some time and dwell on this, they'll probably realize that they can have a pretty good advantage here being with a man, because we still like our male sides. We like we have no intention on doing anything beyond that. We just have an enhanced feminine side, and we encompass that more. And what this does, it brings a greater awareness and knowledge and respect for the women in their lives.
And I know this to be true, Jennifer, because your significant other has mentioned to me in private how considerate you are and patient, and you never rush her during makeup. And and then when they walk down the hall, he always waits. And he's, if she's wearing high heels, he's patient and waits for her. And so whether he's presenting as Jennifer or not, she is a much more considerate person to your significant other. So,
well, we've been in your shoes. Okay, we have literally broken the heel. We've had the pantyhose run on us. We know what it's like, So when we have someone, our significant other, obviously there are significant. That means there's someone that's really special in our life. We really care about them, and they're having an issue or something. It's like we understand that issue. And,
I even got my heel caught in an elevator.
She also has her favorite girlfriend to go out shopping with, so that's another one. Because when I'm in my male mode, I don't like to shop. Put a dress on me, it's like, let's go. I'm ready at the drop of a hat or bonnet, let's say. I'm absolutely. It's really interesting and it's fun. And I love connecting, and I thank you for relaying that little information from. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that because I really do like. I like connection. I think cross-dressers have an enhanced sense of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
that's very true.
Really quickly, I need to mention that if you are watching us right now, then you are either watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, but you can also hear us in podcast form. And so we are on iHeartRadio and we're on iTunes, but we're also on Instagram and we're also on Twitter. So if you don't get to talk to us or see us on Friday, you can see us all week long on Instagram. We want to be there to support you. And I'm starting to grow some friends on our Instagram, Jennifer, that they just mention how much they appreciate the show. And, when we make a post, they're always encouraging and happy to see us on our trips, with the cross-dress travel. And so welcome to come out, guys. Don't just watch the show. Come and join us on Twitter and Facebook and on Instagram, too.
Yes. Thank you. And the cruise is Valentine's Day, by the way. And Tampa, Florida, Carnival Cruise, February 9th, 1 week. Come on down. We'll have a blast. I wanted to ask Rhonda, I heard something about a gingerbread man.
Oh, yeah.
And can you tell us something about a gingerbread man?
Yeah, it's the genderbread man. Let's see. Do you have something you can post? If not, I'll try to put this up. This picture in front of the camera, maybe. This is the best way to understand cross-dressing and transgender issues that I know of. It's a genderbread person. Shouldn't say man when you're talking about things like this. But I don't know if you can see this or not.
We can see it kind of, sort of. And
not
we'll
too
still
good,
need to talk in a little more detail for our radio audience.
Okay. Well, the idea I was giving a classroom presentation once, and after I got done with it, I thought, this is so complex. How can you get across the ideas about the difference between cross-dressers and transsexuals and sexuality and all that sort of thing? And when I thought about it, I came up with this kind of schematic, and I thought, well, let's look at the different aspects of sex and gender. And I came up with, birth sex, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual orientation as being 4 things on the spectrum. I said, I think I can talk about those things that we usually think of binary things of being, somebody born male would want to present as male, they would identify as male, and they would probably be attracted to women. So I thought that makes it kind of simple for me. Well, that evening I went to a seminar at University of Georgia for people that are all over the spectrum. And as I went in the door, they handed me this thing called the genderbread person. I said, what a coincidence. That's exactly what I was thinking about myself, but somebody had already spent the effort to do this. And you can find this on a website called www.itspronouncedmetrosexual.com. You have
we just put the link up on our Facebook and on our YouTube, so you can find it through there.
So you start off with your birth sex, and so you think of a binary, male or female, but actually about 1% of the population is intersex, or something that isn't strictly male or female. So even there, from birth, there are misidentifications at birth, which are far more common than I ever knew. When I got into this, I realized that, a doctor takes a look and says, well, that's what you are. They don't usually check for your DNA or anything else. So sometimes they miss it. So you can have differences at birth. Well, then beyond that, you have your beyond biological sex, you have gender identity. Who do I think I am? So on the genderbread person, the birth, it points to your genitals, and it says that's your birth sex. And for identity, it points to your brain, because generally speaking, most people, I think nowadays, believe that this has to do with genetics, and prior to birth, there are things going on in the womb, and it's not necessarily true that your genitals are determined at the same time as your brain gets the message as to who you think you are. So the brain determines who you think you are, and it may say, I'm a woman, but I have genitals that look like men's. So that's your identity. Who do you think you are? Well, it can be something other than just male or female. It could be gender queer, for instance. You have various things along the spectrum where it's not just one or the other. It also can move from one end to the other. You may feel, I know one person that's probably listening to this show that, wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'm male today, and then maybe tomorrow wakes up and thinks I'm female. So it can actually move between these poles or change during the course of your life. Then there's the gender expression, which is what I see as cross-dressing. How I express myself may be different from how I identify, which it is for me. I express myself as female at least some of the time, but I always identify as male. So my gender is male, but my expression is female. You can have female masculine presentation, feminine presentation, or maybe you're androgynous, where you don't really feel like you want to present either way. You don't feel like you're feminine or masculine in your presentation. So more and more we're finding people express themselves in the way they dress, and they don't associate with one side or the other strictly. So all of this, and the sexual orientation, by the way, is basically has nothing to do with transgender. It's just, and they point to your heart when it comes to that. With the expression, they point and outline your whole body, but with the sexual orientation, it's who you are attracted to. Who is your heart attracted to? And you can be heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, pansexual, asexual, all kinds of sexuals, but none of that has anything to do with your expression or your biological sex or gender identity necessarily. I mean, there's not a strong correlation, as Jane Ellen pointed out. You can't say that cross-dressers tend to be gay, because actually there's fewer gay cross-dressers than there are in the general population. So there's really not a good correlation there. Although she pointed out that there's probably a greater proportion who are bisexual, because some people get so involved with who they are and their feminine side that they may take it to a sexual level. That's still an extreme minority. And you add them all together, and you're still going to come out with the same population percentage. I think it's 18% are gay in the general population or bisexual, and the same thing would hold true with cross-dressers. You just have a little different mix between how the bisexual factors in versus the gay. But that's very helpful to me, to look at that gender-bred person, because you can look pictorially at this whole thing and get a good idea as to how you differ. What is the difference between gender expression and gender identity? And our society has so overemphasized gender identity that we've lost sight of the fact that there's a gender expression that could be different, often is.
Wow. That's, there is so many, we have been inundated with so many new terms these days that people are just literally throwing their hands up and trying to, they're beyond trying to figure it out anymore. And and they kind of melt one into the other in many instances and all. Cross-dressers are pretty much set in a relative boundaries, I think. And I know that in my experience, it's all I can really talk about. But there's a real difference between cross-dressers and then the trans community, which has a lot of these little subcultures, and this is something that we need to get out. And I really appreciate Tri-Ess, because they're keeping this as a more of a pure cross-dressing entity versus being blended with all these others, and that kind of come together and blend in their own way. And there's not very much available to cross-dressers. There's a lot available to the trans community. Politically, that's been picked up. You have media has picked up, and everything is focused so much on their area, which is wonderful for them. They made great progress, and we're sitting here. Most of us are in the closet, and fear reigns, and that's why we were trying to get our media program here to let people know that who we are, not just, and that includes a cross-dresser. That's why I say it's okay to come out, because it's been the trans community that's helped us to afford us the ability to come out and express ourselves. And that's why you see me doing all kinds of things in dress, because I demonstrate to the other cross-dressers that you can do that too. And provided you don't go up that dark alley or do something stupid, you should be fine and welcome.
Yeah, I'll go anywhere.
And welcome. You can go about to any restaurant and small business or whatever, and you're going to be welcomed. If you run into that 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000, whatever it is, just turn around, walk out, and those are those ones that mentally haven't grown up yet, and just don't worry about it.
I've never had a bad experience yet.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah.
Me either. In fact, it's been just the opposite. I've had so many people come up to me and want to talk.
Yes.
And usually it's about someone in their family or their circle that is a cross-dresser or a trans, or, I had this one lady come up talk about her son who's like 12, 13 years old. That's up on the YouTube. You can see that there. I was just trying to pump and get some gas. And there she is. She came up and she saw me, and she was searching. And like you said earlier, there's so much bad information on the internet, and we're trying to provide the good information. That's why Rhonda is here, and we're going to bring Rhonda back next week, folks. She's going to be back next week, and we're going to get into some really good stuff here concerning WPATH and World Path and the U.S. Path, and the work you've been doing along with Jane Ellen to make some real changes and some deeper levels here. And
I need to acknowledge Dr. Bevan, because she's a U.S. Path director, and Dr. Vintang Precha, who is the president of WPATH. So I spoke at his class of medical students. So they've all been very instrumental with all this. It's all coming together.
Yeah, and I will talk about that next week, along with the medical community on their misdiagnosis of us. I want to get a little deeper into that, both in the medical and in the mental field, because we need help like anybody else does, and increasing their awareness so that they can help us. And then that goes in not only us, but it goes into our family and friends and everything else. It just trickles all over the place. So
that's a big point.
We've got a couple minutes left. I'd like to give another moment here for our advertiser on FEM. And I know I personally, I can attest to the quality of their work. Definitely, they have some wonderful products, and I've worn them, and I know you can. I'm definitely big on them. Okay, we all know shopping for that special dress or outfit can sometimes be challenging. Will it fit correctly? Will it be flattering on me? And will I feel confident wearing it? Well, that challenge has been solved at OnFem, the premier clothing brand for the crossdresser and trans woman. At OnFem, they solve the fit challenge by designing for our male bodies, creating signature on-trend styles, and use premium quality fabrics and innovative design techniques to ensure you get a beautiful fit each and every time, so you can feel and be your most confident. You can receive a 15% off your next purchase by using code Free to Be She. Just enter the code Free to Be She during the checkout, and you'll receive 15% off your total order of eligible items. OnFem, helping you express the woman within. That's online. Go to onfemstyle.com, ENFEMMESTYLE.com. And I can attest I've worn them. All that is true. And I want to thank Rhonda for being here. We'll see you next week.
Before we go, I
Yes.
wanted to give a shout out to a couple of people. Shannon on Facebook said that everything y'all are saying is spot on. And Sam from YouTube said that you are very informative. So everybody's appreciating your company with us, Rhonda.
Oh, great.
Well, I love the fact that that we can have wonderful people like Rhonda on here that get the straight scoop, get it right there, precise, let the world knows what's really going on, and get beyond the internet stuff that's out there and get the truth. Yes. I also want to thank Elizabeth for being on this evening, my co-host. And,
it was
fun. Thank you. We should have our co-host, Miss Pamela, back next week. We'll see. She should be, But there again, we can get Melissa here. She's here too, and I want to thank everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time with Rhonda. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. My pleasure.